Happy birthday. Rachel, your surprise is coming. My husband raised his wine glass. He smiled like a man in love. Everyone believed it. I smiled back. Thanks, honey. But he had no idea. I'd already seen him slip something into my wine. Seconds earlier, I'd quietly switched our glasses. 15 minutes later, everything changed. My name is Rachel Monroe, and until that night, I believed there were only two kinds of betrayal. The kind you see coming, and the kind that ends your life before you even know it's begun. My 38th birthday was supposed to be simple. A dinner at the Lakeshore Country Club, just outside Brookhaven, Illinois. Family, old friends, business partners, neighbors we'd known for a decade. My husband, Nathan, insisted on planning it himself. At the time, I thought that was sweet. Now I know he planned every detail with terrifying precision. The ballroom glowed under crystal chandeliers. Soft jazz drifted through hidden speakers. Waiters carried silver trays of champagne. My parents laughed with my coworkers near the fireplace. Nathan's sister, Sophie, arranged people for photos. Everywhere I looked, smiling faces. It looked like the kind of night people remember forever. Just not for the reason anyone expected. Nathan wrapped his arm around my waist. The photographer adjusted his lens. "Smile," Nathan whispered. I did. His hand felt warm on my back, steady, comforting. Exactly the way it always had. That's what scared me later, that someone could feel so safe while hiding something so dark. 3, 2, 1. Flash. People clapped for no reason except happiness. The photographer moved on. Nathan picked up 2 glasses of red wine from a passing server. He handed one to me. I reached for it automatically. Then someone called my name from across the room. Rachel. I turned to wave at my college roommate, Megan. When I turned back, Nathan thought I wasn't watching. His body blocked most of the movement. Most, not all. I caught it, a quick glance over his shoulder, his fingers dipping toward my glass. Then, gone. Anyone else would have missed it. I didn't. My stomach tightened. "What was that?" I asked casual. He blinked. "What?" "You looked nervous." He laughed, planning a surprise. "We'll do that." Around us, the party kept moving. Glasses clinked. Someone sang along with the band. Everything looked normal. Everything except Nathan. For the first time in 12 years of marriage, I noticed something I'd somehow ignored. He wouldn't hold my eyes for more than a second. I took the glass. I didn't drink. My pulse pounded in my ears. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was the napkin. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe. I remember thinking, absurdly, about the caterer's menu card sitting folded by my plate. Filet, roasted vegetables, a champagne toast at 9. Ordinary details, printed in gold script, as if the night had been designed only for celebration. I remember the weight of my own earrings, a gift from Nathan 2 birthdays ago. I remember thinking none of this made sense, and then thinking that made sense was exactly the problem I was trying to force what I'd seen into a shape that fit the man I thought I'd married. Then Nathan excused himself to greet another guest. The second he turned, I switched our glasses. Less than 2 seconds, no drama, no hesitation. No one noticed. Not even him. I wasn't trying to trap him. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I just refused to drink from a glass I watched someone tamper with. There was no way to unsee that. While everyone turned toward the cake being wheeled in, I slid my phone out beneath the tablecloth. My hands shook once, then steadied. I typed a short message to emergency services. "I believe someone tampered with my drink at my birthday party. Please send officers to the Lakeshore Country Club. I don't know what's in it, but I don't feel safe." I read it twice. Then I pressed send. No accusations, no conclusions, just the truth. I slid the phone back into my purse. A minute later, Nathan came back carrying the cake. 38 tiny candles flickered over white frosting and fresh strawberries. Everyone gathered around me. The band started playing. People sang. Nathan stood beside me, smiling like the perfect husband. "You deserve the best birthday," he said, loud enough for the whole room. His eyes found mine. For half a second, I wondered if he somehow knew. If he did, he gave nothing away. He raised his glass, the one I'd switched. "I've loved you for 12 incredible years." The guests smiled. "You've changed my life." Applause. "And tonight, your biggest surprise is finally here." He drank. A long swallow, then another. My heartbeat slowed instead of racing. I didn't feel victorious. I felt cold. Because now there was only one question left. What did he intend for me? Dinner continued. Conversations resumed. People laughed, ate steak, argued about football. For almost 15 minutes, Nathan looked completely normal. Then he started rubbing his temple, blinking too much. His smile faded. "You okay?" his brother asked. "Yeah," Nathan said. His voice sounded distant, far away. A minute later, he reached for the back of a chair. His hand missed. The wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered across the floor. Conversation stopped. He stared at the broken glass like he didn't understand how it got there. Sweat beaded on his forehead, in a cool room. His breathing turned uneven. "Nathan?" I asked quietly. He looked at me. Not angry, not confused, terrified. His lips parted. He whispered something too soft for anyone else to hear. "Wrong." He swallowed hard. Glass. His knees buckled. Guests rushed toward him from every direction. Someone screamed for a doctor. Someone else called for an ambulance. Nathan reached toward me with a shaking hand, trying to speak. His voice cracked. "She was supposed..." He stopped. His face changed. In that instant, he realized what finishing that sentence would mean. The ballroom doors opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. Nathan looked up in visible relief, like salvation had arrived. One officer scanned the room, then walked straight to our table. He looked at Nathan, then at the broken glass. Then he spoke. "Sir, we'd like to ask a few questions regarding a report that a drink may have been tampered with tonight." Every eye in the ballroom turned toward us. For the first time that night, Nathan's perfect smile disappeared. For one long second, no one moved. The officer's words hung under the chandelier, heavier than the shattered glass on the floor. 100 guests froze, some holding half-eaten cake, others already filming with their phones. Every face asked the same question. Whose drink? Nathan sat hunched in a chair, his brother's hand on his shoulder. His skin had gone gray under the warm lights. Then his mother turned toward me. Her eyes narrowed. "Rachel," she said, sharp enough to cut through the panic. "What is going on?" That was all it took. The room shifted. Not physically, emotionally. I felt it the way you feel cold air when someone opens a door in winter. One moment, people were afraid for Nathan. The next, they were looking at me like I was the danger. I expected fear. I did not expect that. "I sent the message," I said, keeping my voice even. "I saw someone tamper with a drink." Sophie stood so fast, her chair scraped the floor. "You called the police at your own birthday party." "I called because I didn't feel safe." "He's the one who's sick." "I know." My answer only made it worse. A murmur moved through the crowd. My father pushed toward me, but my mother caught his arm, silently warning him not to make the scene bigger. Megan stood by the cake table, hand over her mouth, staring at me like she wanted to believe me, but didn't understand how. One officer stepped closer. Middle-aged, tired eyes, calm voice. The kind of man who's walked into 100 rooms already shouting. "Ma'am, are you Rachel Monroe?" "Yes." "You're the one who contacted emergency services." "Yes." "Did you drink from the glass in question?" "No." Nathan's head lifted slightly. His eyes met mine. For one horrifying moment, there was no sickness in them at all. Only warning. The second officer crouched near the glass without touching it. We need everyone to step back. Nobody touches the table. An older man near the bar muttered, "Good Lord." The ambulance arrived. Paramedics asked questions. What had he eaten? How much did he drink? Any medical conditions? Medications. Nathan tried to answer. His words slurred. "I don't know. There was something in the wine." His mother gasped. Sophie pointed at me. "You hear that he said something in the wine?" "Ma'am, please don't interfere." "I'm not interfering. I'm telling you she had the other glass." My heart sank. She was right. To everyone in that room, the story looked simple. Nathan got sick after drinking from a glass that was originally handed to me. I had called the police before anything happened. I hadn't touched mine. I'd stayed calm while my husband collapsed. Calm, I learned that night, can look exactly like guilt when people want someone to blame. "I need you to come with me," the officer said gently. My father stepped forward. "Is my daughter under arrest?" "No, sir. We're separating witnesses and preserving statements." Witnesses. The word should have comforted me. It didn't. They took me to a small sitting room off the main hallway. A floral sofa, 2 armchairs, a framed watercolor of a golf course at sunrise. Outside, I could hear muffled voices, hurried footsteps, and once Nathan groaning as paramedics wheeled him past. I closed my eyes. Not because I was afraid of what had happened, because I was afraid of what almost had. The officer sat across from me with a notepad. "Tell me exactly what you saw." So I did. I told him about Nathan handing me the wine, about Megan calling my name, about turning back just in time to catch his hand near my glass. I told him I didn't know what he'd done, only that something was wrong. I told him I switched the glasses because I refused to drink after seeing what I saw. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked, "Why didn't you confront him?" I looked at my hands. My wedding ring caught the light. Because if I was wrong, I would have humiliated my husband in front of our friends. And if I was right, I swallowed. Then I didn't know what he might do. Something in the officer's face softened. He wrote that down. Nearly an hour passed before my parents and Megan were allowed in. My mother hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. My father just stood there, jaw clenched, eyes wet with anger he was trying very hard to control. Megan sat beside me. "Rach, what the hell is happening?" "I don't know." That wasn't entirely true anymore. I knew Nathan had expected me to drink from that glass. I knew he'd been terrified when he realized he'd drunk from it instead. And I knew his unfinished sentence, she was supposed, would never leave my mind. Near midnight, another officer returned. "You can go home, Mrs. Monroe. Your husband is stable. He's being treated at Ashcroft Medical Center." My mother exhaled in relief, despite everything. Do they know what it was? Preliminary information suggests exposure to a substance that can cause confusion, impaired coordination, and short-term memory issues. We'll know more after lab testing. Memory issues. That word hit me harder than poison would have. Not death. Control. That thought entered my mind first, though I couldn't yet explain why. At this point, we're not making arrests tonight. We need lab results, footage, formal statements. Sophie's voice erupted down the hallway. "You're letting her leave!" The door was open enough for me to hear. She did this to him. My father turned, furious. I grabbed his wrist. "Don't," I whispered. He looked at me heartbroken. "Rachel, please." Because suddenly I understood something important. Nathan's family had already chosen their story. By morning, everyone would hear it. Poor Nathan collapsed at his own wife's birthday party. Rachel called the police before he even got sick. Rachel switched the glasses. Rachel was too calm. And in the space between suspicion and proof, a woman can lose her reputation faster than a man can lose consciousness. When I finally stepped outside, camera flashes burst near the entrance. Someone had called a local reporter. Or maybe the story had already spread from a dozen phones. My mother draped her coat over my shoulders as we walked toward my father's truck. I glanced back once. Through the windows, I could see workers cleaning the ballroom where I blew out no candles, opened no gifts, and left behind a cake no one wanted to eat. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. You should have just drunk it. Rachel. I stopped walking. My father noticed. What is it? I stared at the words until they blurred. Another message appeared. Now everyone's going to think you poisoned your husband. And for the first time that night, I realized Nathan might not have planned this alone. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. You should have just drunk it. Rachel. The words weren't angry. They weren't emotional. They were matter of fact, like whoever sent them believed they were stating something obvious. At 6 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee when my father walked in carrying a grocery bag. You need to eat. I can't. You have to try. He set a muffin and a banana beside me before taking the chair across from mine. My parents had insisted on staying the night. My mother was upstairs asleep after crying herself to exhaustion. Dad folded his hands together. The detective called while you were in the shower. I looked up. What did he say? The lab confirmed there was a drug in the wine. I held my breath. It wasn't poison. I know. They're saying it was a prescription medication that affects coordination, judgment, and short-term memory. The dose Nathan got wasn't life-threatening. Exactly what the officer had hinted the night before. Not murder. Something else. They're still trying to identify the exact compound. Dad continued. They've also pulled security footage from the club. I nodded slowly. For the first time since the party, I felt something stronger than fear. Curiosity. If Nathan hadn't meant to kill me, what exactly had he meant to do? By mid-morning, my attorney, Patricia Lang, arrived. I'd met Patricia 5 years earlier during a supplier dispute at work. Calm, relentlessly practical. Annoying habit of asking uncomfortable questions before offering any comfort at all. She sat across from me, legal pad on her knee. Let's assume you're telling the truth, she began. I am. I believe you. A pause. But belief isn't evidence. I appreciated that. Most people either treated me like a victim or a suspect. Patricia treated me like a client. Walk me through last night again. I did. Every detail. Every sentence Nathan spoke. When I finished, she tapped her pen against the pad. You said he announced your big surprise. Yes. Did he tell you beforehand what it was? No. Was there supposed to be a gift? I assumed so. Patricia frowned. What happened to it? The question stopped me cold. The gift? No one had mentioned it after Nathan collapsed. The beautifully wrapped box I'd expected never appeared. That afternoon, I went home for the first time since the party. The house felt strangely empty. Not because Nathan wasn't there, because everything looked exactly the same. His jacket still hung by the garage door, his running shoes by the stairs, his coffee mug in the sink. The ordinary details of a marriage looked almost cruel the morning after something extraordinary. I walked into his home office. For 12 years, we'd respected each other's workspaces. I'd never searched his desk, never checked his drawers, never guessed I'd someday need to. Most of what I found was ordinary tax files, insurance papers, business contracts. Then I opened the bottom drawer. Empty. Except for a small indentation in the dust. Something had been there recently. Something the size of a document case. It had been removed. Recently. Too recently. Patricia arrived 20 minutes later. She stood in the doorway. Did Nathan normally keep important papers in here? Everything. I gestured at the empty drawer. She crouched beside it. Huh. What? The dust pattern, she pointed. Whatever was here wasn't removed months ago. You think someone came after the party. She looked up. I think someone expected to retrieve something. That sentence stayed with me all afternoon. Not hide. Retrieve. As if yesterday had been scheduled down to the minute. That evening, Detective Ray Sullivan called. I put him on speaker so Patricia could hear. We've identified the medication. What was it? A controlled prescription sedative. At the amount recovered from your husband's blood, it would likely cause confusion, impaired judgment, memory gaps, and reduced awareness. Would it make someone unconscious? No. Would it kill them? No. Patricia leaned forward. What would someone typically use a drug like that for? The detective hesitated. I can't speculate. You can. A longer silence. Off the record. Off the record. It's more consistent with someone trying to manipulate a person's decision-making than trying to physically harm them. The room went very quiet. Patricia and I looked at each other. Neither of us spoke until the call ended. Then she said it. This wasn't about making you disappear. No. It was about making you compliant. The word made my stomach twist. That night, I couldn't stop thinking. Every anniversary dinner, every gala, every holiday party where Nathan insisted on pouring my wine himself. Every morning I woke up with a headache and blamed stress. Every forgotten conversation, every missing detail. I remembered something that had bothered me months earlier. A board meeting where our accountant thanked me for approving a delay in a property purchase. I'd laughed. I had no memory of approving anything. Nathan had smiled and said, "You've been working too hard." I believed him. Now I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I drove to my office downtown. My assistant, Ashley, greeted me with an awkward hug. "I'm so glad you're okay." "Thanks." She lowered her voice. "People are talking." I know. I don't believe them. Her loyalty nearly brought me to tears. As we walked toward my office, she hesitated. "There was something strange yesterday morning." "What?" "A courier delivered an envelope marked personal. I never saw it. Nathan picked it up himself." My footsteps stopped. "He said he'd give it to you at your birthday dinner." "What company?" "I don't remember. Can I check?" Ashley searched the delivery log. 30 seconds later, she looked up. It wasn't a company. "What do you mean?" "It came from a law office." Patricia was in my office within the hour. We requested a copy of the delivery receipt, the sender's name at the top. Whitmore and Kane Legal Group. Neither of us recognized it. Patricia opened her laptop. 5 minutes later, she looked at me, eyes narrowed. "This firm specializes in estate restructuring, corporate transfers, and irrevocable trusts." My pulse quickened. Why would Nathan have legal documents delivered to my office without telling me? Patricia didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked the question I'd been avoiding since the party. "Rachel, if those papers were meant to be your birthday surprise, why was it so important that you drink that wine first?" I stared through the window toward the busy street below. Cars moved. People hurried to lunch. Life continued exactly as it always had. Mine no longer did, because for the first time, I could see the outline of the truth. The drug had never been the destination. It had only been the first step. Whatever Nathan wanted required me to stay alive, required me conscious. But it required me to trust him long enough to sign something I would never sign with a clear mind. And somewhere between the missing legal documents, the empty drawer, and the anonymous texts, someone else was still trying to finish the plan that had failed at my birthday party. Patricia told me not to call Whitmore and Kane. "Not yet," she said, arms folded, eyes fixed on the delivery receipt. "If Nathan used them, or if someone there is helping him, calling will only warn them. So what do? We ask quieter questions." That was Patricia's gift. She never sounded frightened. She sounded like a woman arranging furniture in a room while everyone else ran from a fire. By noon, she'd sent formal preservation letters to the country club, the law firm, Nathan's financial advisor, and our accountant, requiring them to retain every email, call log, draft, and delivery record. She also filed notice with the bank, no transfers involving my signature without direct verbal confirmation and independent counsel present. "Think of it as locking the doors," she said. I looked at her. "And if someone's already inside, then we find out who gave them the key." That afternoon, Detective Sullivan called again. He'd reviewed enough club footage to confirm Nathan had handled both wine glasses before handing one to me. The angle didn't show the object entering the glass, but it showed his body blocking the table, his hand moving, and me switching the glasses seconds later. It didn't prove everything. It proved enough to stop people from pretending I'd invented the moment. Still, the story outside our small circle had already taken on a life of its own. Wife calls police before husband collapses at birthday party. Businesswoman's husband hospitalized after wine incident. Guests question strange behavior at country club celebration. No one said attempted poisoning directly. They didn't have to. Nathan's family did the rest. Sophie posted a photo from the party, Nathan and me, minutes before he collapsed, his arm around my waist. Her caption, "Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you should fear most." My mother called crying. My father called furious. Ashley texted only 4 words. "We know the truth." I wanted that to be enough. It wasn't, because I was learning the truth needs evidence. Otherwise, it's just another version of a story someone louder can drown out. The first real break came from someone I didn't expect. His name was Marcus Diaz, one of the bartenders from the country club. He called Patricia's office the next morning and asked to speak privately. We met him in a back booth of a quiet diner off the highway. Gray hoodie, baseball cap pulled low, a cup of coffee he never touched. "I don't know what he put in the glass," Marcus said, "but I know he asked me something strange." Patricia set her recorder on the table, after getting his permission. "What did he ask?" Marcus glanced toward the front window, like he was checking if he'd been followed. He asked whether red wine would hide a crushed pill. My hands went cold around my mug. When? 2 weeks before the party. He said it was for a prank, like one of those fake bitter tablets. I told him I didn't want anything to do with it. "Did he mention Rachel?" Patricia asked. "No, but he asked which wine she liked. Said she always drank Pinot Noir if it was from Oregon." That detail hit harder than I expected. Nathan knew my wine order, my favorite flowers, how I took my coffee, the name of the blanket I used on Sunday movie nights. Love isn't supposed to make someone easier to hurt. Marcus swallowed. There was a woman with him. Patricia's pen paused. What woman? Blonde, early 40s maybe, expensive coat. She didn't talk much, but she laughed when he said his wife wouldn't notice anything after 2 glasses. I felt the diner tilt slightly. Patricia slid a printed photo across the table. A picture of Kristen Voss, Nathan's former college girlfriend, now a consultant, who'd recently started showing up at charity events with Sophie. Marcus looked at it for less than a second. "That's her." I closed my eyes. Kristen, of course. Not because she was prettier, or younger, or more exciting. She wasn't. What she had was history with Nathan, and history can become poison when people feed it long enough. Patricia asked Marcus to sign a statement. He hesitated, then did, after he left. I sat staring at the wet ring my coffee cup left on the table. Patricia waited. Finally, I said, "How long do you think this has been going on?" "The affair." "No," I looked up. "The plan." She didn't answer. That was answer enough. Over the next 3 days, the pieces came together. Ashley found emails Nathan had forwarded from my office account to himself months earlier. Nothing dramatic at first glance. Calendar entries, board agendas, meeting notes, legal reminders. Our accountant confirmed Nathan had asked about streamlining decision authority if Rachel became medically unavailable. Whitmore and Kane didn't respond to Patricia's first request. That told her more than a response would have. Then Detective Sullivan obtained hallway camera footage from outside the ballroom. At 8:42 p.m., 12 minutes after Nathan collapsed, Kristen Voss exited through a side door carrying a black leather document case, the same size as the dust outline in Nathan's office drawer. Patricia watched the footage 3 times without speaking. I watched it once. That was all I needed. The next morning, I did something that felt almost impossible. I called Nathan. He'd been released from the hospital the day before and was staying with his mother. His voice sounded weak, not weak enough to stop him from performing. "Rachel," he said softly, "thank God, I've been so worried." I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned against the counter, watching steam rise off my coffee. "Have you?" "You have to know I would never hurt you." There it was. The sentence guilty people prepare before innocent people even accuse them. Then tell me what was in the wine. Silence. I don't know. Then tell me why you said wrong glass. His breathing changed. I was delirious, and she was supposed... He stopped. Rachel, I almost died. No, Nathan, you didn't. That landed. I heard it in the pause that followed. You were exposed to something meant to make a person confused, compliant, forgetful, not dead. His voice hardened, just a half degree. Who told you that? Does it matter? You need to be careful who you listen to. I could say the same. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I thought of 12 years of marriage, holiday cards, mortgage payments, anniversary dinners, ordinary Tuesday mornings. I thought of all the times he'd kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Then I thought of him watching me lift that glass. I thought about the notes he used to leave on the bathroom mirror in the early years. Small things. Have a good day. Beautiful. Somewhere between year 3 and year 12, those notes had quietly stopped, and I hadn't even noticed the exact day it happened. Marriages don't usually end with one dramatic betrayal. They erode first, one small silence at a time, until the betrayal just walks in through a door that was already open. Nathan lowered his voice. Come to my mother's house tonight, alone. We need to talk before lawyers turn this into something it isn't. There it was again. Control, disguised as concern. No, Nathan, I'm not meeting you without my attorney. His softness vanished. You're making a mistake. I looked toward the window, where my father was raking leaves he'd already raked twice, because he needed something to do with his anger. No, I said quietly. I made a mistake when I trusted you with my drink. Then I hung up. That evening, another anonymous text arrived. Stop digging. A second later, a photo followed me. Leaving Patricia's office that afternoon, my hands trembled. But this time, not from fear. From clarity. I forwarded it to Detective Sullivan, then to Patricia. Her reply came almost instantly. Good. Now they're scared. I stared at those words for a long time. They were scared. Nathan, Kristen, whoever at Whitmore and Kane had prepared those documents. Whoever else believed I would wake up after my birthday with a headache, a missing memory, and a signature on papers I didn't understand. They were scared because the woman they planned to confuse had become the one asking the right questions. And I knew then that I couldn't just defend myself. I had to let them believe they still had a chance to win, because frightened people run, but arrogant people keep talking. The hardest part wasn't gathering evidence. It was pretending I didn't already have it. Patricia warned me that people like Nathan rarely stop after their first plan fails. They adjust. If they believed I'd become frightened enough to retreat, they'd keep moving. And every move would leave another footprint. So I disappeared. At least, that's what I let them think. For nearly a week, I canceled every non-essential meeting, stopped answering reporters, ignored social media, worked almost entirely from home. Ashley handled questions at the office with the same careful line every time. Ms. Monroe is on personal leave. The gossip shifted overnight. Some decided I was ashamed. Others assumed I was negotiating a divorce. Sophie kept posting vague quotes about betrayal and justice. Nathan stayed silent. That surprised me more than anything. He'd always hated losing control of the story. Patricia smiled when I mentioned it. He isn't silent, she said. He's busy. She was right. 2 days later, Ashley called just after lunch. Rachel, someone from Whitmore and Kane, just contacted accounting. What did they want? They asked if the board meeting scheduled next Tuesday was still happening. I frowned. How would they even know about the board meeting? That's exactly why I called. After hanging up, Patricia leaned back. They're expecting something to happen at that meeting. They still think they can finish this. They wouldn't ask otherwise. Our company wasn't enormous, but after 15 years of growth, Monroe Design Studio employed nearly 200 people across the state. Nathan managed operations. I oversaw strategy and major client relationships. Legally, I remained majority owner. If someone wanted control, they needed me, or something that looked enough like me. Patricia contacted the board chairman that afternoon. The meeting would proceed exactly as scheduled. Only one thing would change. Every word would be recorded. Meanwhile, Detective Sullivan quietly expanded the investigation. The anonymous photo of me leaving Patricia's office hadn't been sent through anything sophisticated. Whoever sent it made a mistake. A prepaid phone purchased 3 weeks earlier. The store's security camera caught the buyer. Kristen, sunglasses, indoors, paid cash, looked directly into the camera for nearly 2 full seconds. Detective Sullivan called it the kind of mistake people make when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Friday morning brought another surprise. Marcus called again. I remembered something. Patricia put him on speaker. The woman Kristen, when she left the club that night, she wasn't carrying that leather case anymore. Patricia and I exchanged a look. Are you sure? Positive. So she left with it, but not when she got to her car. My pulse quickened. Then who took it? I don't know. The answer came from somewhere entirely unexpected. Late that afternoon, an elderly maintenance worker from the club contacted Detective Sullivan after seeing local news. He remembered cleaning the ballroom after everyone left. There'd been a black leather case under the head table. He assumed a guest forgot it. He turned it in to Lost and Found. No one ever claimed it. By 6 that evening, Detective Sullivan stood inside the club's administrative office, opening a storage cabinet. Inside sat the document case, exactly where everyone had forgotten to look. He called Patricia before opening it. I thought you'd want to witness this. An hour later, Patricia phoned me. They found it. I stood so fast my chair tipped backward. What's inside? A draft shareholder transfer agreement. I stopped breathing. There are also trust amendments, banking authorizations, corporate resolutions. My voice barely worked. My signature, no, a pause, signature lines. I leaned against the counter. So they never finished. They couldn't, Patricia's voice softened. Rachel, if you'd consumed that drug, they planned to present these as your birthday surprise. I closed my eyes. Nathan's toast echoed in my head. Your biggest surprise is finally here. The surprise had never been jewelry, or a vacation, or a romantic announcement. It had been paperwork. Paperwork that would have quietly transferred practical control of everything I'd spent 15 years building. Monday arrived, the board meeting less than 24 hours away. At 10 that morning, Nathan called again. This time, I answered. I heard you're coming to the meeting. I am. We should settle this privately. There isn't anything left to settle. There doesn't have to be a scandal. I almost admired his confidence, even now. You still think I'm trying to destroy you, he said. I think you already tried. You don't understand. Then explain. Another silence. Longer this time. Finally, he sighed. Kristen convinced me we'd both be happier. There it was. Not an apology, an explanation designed to reduce responsibility. Did Kristen convince you to put something in my wine? He didn't answer. Did Kristen convince you to prepare legal documents behind my back? Still nothing. You know what I think, Nathan. What? I think you've lied for so long, you've forgotten what your own voice sounds like. He hung up. Tuesday morning. I arrived at headquarters 30 minutes early. Patricia walked beside me carrying 3 binders. Detective Sullivan wasn't there. Neither were uniformed officers. This wasn't an arrest. Not yet. This was something else. The board members filed in one by one. Several looked uncomfortable. A few avoided eye contact entirely. Nathan arrived last. He looked healthier than he had since the party, though he'd lost weight over the last week. Kristen wasn't with him, but I noticed he kept checking his phone, waiting, expecting. He smiled when he saw me. I'm glad you came. So am I. The chairman cleared his throat. Shall we begin? Patricia stood. Before we do, Ms. Monroe has one procedural request. Nathan's smile faltered. given recent events. Patricia continued calmly. Today's meeting will begin with a review of several documents that have recently come into our possession. Nathan turned toward me. His face stayed composed. Only his eyes changed. For the first time since my birthday, I saw uncertainty. Patricia placed the black leather document case on the center of the table. No one spoke. Nathan stared at it like he was looking at a ghost. "I don't understand," he managed. "I think you do," I said quietly. The room stayed silent as Patricia opened the case. Documents slid onto the polished wood, one after another. Draft transfer agreements, corporate resolutions, trust amendments. Unsigned. Waiting. The chairman adjusted his glasses. "Nathan, would you care to explain why legal documents transferring effective control of this company were prepared without the knowledge of its majority owner?" Nathan opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward the empty chair beside him where Kristen should have been. She never arrived. Because at that exact moment, 2 detectives were executing a search warrant at her condominium. And for the first time since I switched those wine glasses, Nathan finally understood what it felt like to realize the plan had truly failed. Nathan never answered the chairman's question. He looked at the stack of documents on the table like they belonged to a stranger. His mouth opened twice before words came. "They're only drafts." Patricia didn't even glance at him. "They are," she agreed, which makes one question especially important. She slid the first document across the table. Why were these drafts delivered to Ms. Monroe's office on the morning of her birthday without her knowledge? Silence. "And why," she continued, placing another document beside it, "were they removed from Mr. Whitfield's home office immediately after he was hospitalized?" The chairman looked from Nathan to me. "Is this true?" Nathan rubbed both hands over his face. I was trying to simplify our business structure without telling Rachel. It was supposed to be a surprise." That word landed in the room like broken glass. A surprise? The same word he used, raising his wine glass at my birthday party. No one smiled this time. Patricia opened another folder. Detective Sullivan has confirmed these documents were prepared weeks before the party. They were not a birthday gift. They were legal instruments that would have transferred effective control of Ms. Monroe's ownership interests. Nathan's shoulders sagged, but they weren't signed. "No," Patricia's voice stayed calm, "because something unexpected happened." She didn't have to say what. Everyone at the table already knew. The wrong person had drunk from the wrong glass. The investigation accelerated over the next 3 weeks. Search warrants uncovered encrypted messages between Kristen and Nathan discussing keeping Rachel agreeable long enough to finish everything in one evening. They never used the word drug, never described exactly what would go in the wine. They were careful, too careful. People who believe they're clever often overlook something simple: time. The messages matched the dates on the legal drafts. Restaurant receipts placed Nathan and Kristen together with one of the attorneys from Whitmore and Kane, multiple times over several months. Bank records showed unusually large consulting payments moving between companies connected to Kristen and accounts controlled by Nathan. No single piece of evidence proved everything. Together, they told one story. The attorney from Whitmore and Kane made the first deal. He wasn't willing to risk his license or his freedom for people already blaming each other. His testimony changed everything. Mr. Whitfield insisted the transfers were voluntary, he admitted. He said Rachel wanted fewer responsibilities. "Did you ever hear that from Rachel herself?" Detective Sullivan asked. "No." "Did you ever speak with her?" "No." "Then why continue?" The attorney lowered his head. I believed my client. That belief cost him his career. It's a small, quiet lesson buried in the middle of a much bigger story that entire systems of trust, legal systems included, run on the assumption that the person speaking loudest and most confidently is telling the truth. Nobody stopped to ask the person the paperwork was actually about. Not once. Not until it was almost too late. Kristen lasted 4 more days. Then she requested her own attorney. Unlike Nathan, she understood something important. The conspiracy no longer depended on loyalty. It depended on whoever spoke first. She admitted the affair had started nearly a year earlier, admitted encouraging Nathan to restructure ownership, admitted discussing ways to make me less resistant during important conversations. But when detectives asked who suggested putting the substance in the wine, she looked down at the table. Nathan. Nathan refused every chance to explain himself directly to me. Instead, letters through his attorney. The first blamed Kristen. The second blamed stress. The third blamed loneliness. None contained the words, "I'm sorry." Patricia handed each one back without response. "He isn't apologizing," she said. "He's negotiating." She was right. Even after everything, Nathan still believed there was a version of events he could sell. Not to me, to himself. 6 months after my birthday, our divorce hearing began. The courtroom felt strangely ordinary. No dramatic music, no shouting, just polished wooden benches, fluorescent lights, and people waiting for their own difficult mornings to begin. Nathan sat across the room in a dark navy suit I'd bought him 3 Christmases earlier. He looked older, smaller somehow, not because of the legal process, because there was no one left sitting beside him. Kristen had accepted a plea agreement and disappeared from public life. Sophie attended only the first day before quietly leaving. His mother never came. My parents sat directly behind me. Dad squeezed my shoulder before the hearing started. "You already won." I smiled gently. No, I survived. Winning had become something different. I sat there, watching Nathan's lawyer shuffle papers he already knew wouldn't help him. And I thought about the version of me who'd stood in that ballroom a year earlier, smiling for a photographer, certain the worst thing that could happen that night was a bad toast. That version of me was gone now. Not broken, just rebuilt with sturdier walls. There's a strange kind of grief in that, grieving the version of yourself who still trusted easily, even while you're grateful she's gone. Judge Eleanor Voss, no relation, an unfortunate coincidence Patricia joked about weeks earlier, reviewed the property settlement, the corporate records, and the investigative findings with the same careful professionalism she brought to every case. When she reached the evidence surrounding the birthday party, she paused. "I've reviewed the forensic reports." The courtroom went completely still. The laboratory confirmed an impairing substance was present in the wine consumed by Mr. Whitfield. Nathan stared at the defense table. The court also notes Mr. Whitfield handled both wine glasses immediately before the incident. Another pause. Ms. Monroe reported suspected tampering before anyone became ill. She looked directly at Nathan. Those facts matter. They mattered because they couldn't be rewritten. Not by rumors, not by family loyalty, not by expensive attorneys. Truth had finally caught up with the story. 3 months later, Monroe Design Studio celebrated its 15th anniversary. The celebration looked nothing like my 38th birthday. No ballroom, no orchestra, no elaborate speeches. We held it at the company's renovated warehouse headquarters. Barbecue from a local restaurant, folding tables, employees' kids running through the courtyard. Ashley laughed while helping children decorate cupcakes. Marcus, the bartender, whose courage changed the course of the investigation, attended as an honored guest. Patricia arrived late, carrying nothing but a paper gift bag. Inside was a simple crystal wine glass, engraved with 4 words. Always trust your instincts. I laughed harder than I had in months. Then I hugged her. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on my back porch. The divorce was final, the company was healthy, the headlines had moved on. The silence didn't frighten me anymore. My mother called just before sunset. "Happy birthday," she said. I smiled. "You remembered. I'll always remember. So will I." We talked about ordinary things. Her garden, Dad's fishing trip, my nephew starting college. Real life had finally returned. Before hanging up, she asked one question. "Do you hate him?" I looked toward the fading orange sky. I thought about the toast, the switched glasses, the anonymous messages, the courtroom, everything that followed. "No," I answered honestly. "I hate what he chose." After the call ended, I poured sparkling water into Patricia's crystal glass and raised it toward the quiet evening. 1 year earlier, Nathan had promised me a surprise. He was right, just not the one he expected. The greatest surprise wasn't discovering how deeply someone could betray me. It was discovering how much stronger I became the moment I stopped ignoring what my instincts had been trying to tell me all along. Sometimes revenge isn't watching another person lose everything. Sometimes revenge is refusing to lose yourself. And when the truth finally arrives, it doesn't need to shout. It just stands still long enough for everyone else to see it. So let me ask you the same question my mother asked me. If you saw someone you loved slip something into your drink, would you have said something right there, in front of everyone? Or would you have done exactly what I did, stayed quiet, switched the glass, and let the truth do the talking? Tell me honestly in the comments. I read every single one. And if you think Nathan's story ends there, it doesn't. Kristen's plea deal opened a door nobody expected. And that's the next video on this channel. If you want more stories like this, real deception, real consequences, real endings, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss what comes next.